time thing is you have to win.
There you go. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Hey, Mark, settle down a little bit.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Just Win podcast. That's Marshall Newhouse. I'm Ted Wynn, and we're coming at you guys live after a Raiders W. It's been a while. They haven't won a game since week 1, so it's good to get that taste out of the taste defeat out of your mouth. But they beat the Titans by double digits, and I think based on some of the reactions you saw online, I don't think people are that happy about it, but I think a win is a win, and this game was never really in question. I think the offensive operation is still a little messy, but we also have to remember the Titans have a pretty talented defensive line, and that's kind of the Achilles heel for the Raiders, because they still have some offensive line issues. And with that, let's start with offensive line issues. I know it's basically the theme of our show right now, but it's basically what controls the Raiders' destiny as of now, how well their line plays from week to week. What do you see, Marshall?
Yeah, we talked about it leading up to this game. Jeffrey Simmons is just a beast. He's not just like in their division beast, in their conference beast. He's like a top 3, top 5 interior defensive lineman, and he showed why. Today, both in the run and pass. He's a handful. So they knew that going in. They knew this front would be stout against the run going in. So it felt like at moments it was a grind it away kind of game for the O-line up front. Some penetration, some messy run looks, run execution. But you and I were talking a little bit. I think when they stuck to inside zone versus outside zone, and when they stuck to duo versus trying to run these counter plays with the tight end in a kind of an offset formation, I think that led to more success for Jeanty. He had one of his highest usage rates all season. So, he took some hits, and the hits were a lot of times for 2.5 yards. And so that's not what you want to get used to, even though he can take it. He's young. You want to see him get a little bit more space at the line of scrimmage. But again, this was a good unit. And I just commend them for, Chip Kelly for sticking with the run. They kept giving it a shot. He popped a couple, but no real explosive gains. I think his longest run was 12 or 13 yards, 3.3 yards per carry. So nothing crazy. But again, that was kind of a workmanlike day against a team that you should beat. But the D line was stout, and on the back end is where you thought they would make a little bit more of their hay. But again, we were talking during the game. It was very apparent that they were trying to reduce Geno's depth of target. There's a stat called ADOT, average depth of target. Geno, despite the rough outings and the interceptions, has been, I think, top 10 in depth of target. So he's been trying to push the ball down the field. But I imagine, as a lot of fans and we have talked about, that's been part of the problem, is you don't have the horses to necessarily do that yet. And so it looked like a very concerted effort to throw underneath, check down to Jeanty, which is not the worst thing to do. And even when they try to do it, Geno gets rushed and throws a pick. So it's just been a rough going for them so far. He didn't have a stellar day necessarily, but 18 for 25 for 174. But again, more than not, he took care of the ball. And then what they did was score in the red zone. They got opportunistic turnover there. Cam Ward, had one of those rookie kind of days. He was under pressure all day. He turned the ball over a couple times. And the Raiders took advantage. So that's what you have to do. But offensive line beginning, had some good moments. The touchdown run for Jeanty. When they stuck to inside zone, it wasn't pretty, but they were moving guys around a little bit more. The outside zone just does not seem to work. And these long developing counter gap scheme plays do not seem to work. So I liked what I saw. Parham had his hands full with Simmons. And Forsyth in the run looked pretty stout. In the past, he had a couple rough reps, but overall, I think a better day. But again, this is what I think you would expect being favored in this game versus the Titans.
Yeah, I think as far as the run blocking, like running duo inside zone, especially the way they're running it, where they're just trying to get upfield and avoid negative plays, like that does work to a degree, but like eventually you have to get some of these more explosive runs dialed in. But it's hard to do against a guy like Jeffrey Simmons, who legitimately might be one of the best defensive tackles in the league. So today they got away with it, and Jeanty was able to just get enough positive yardage to keep the offense moving. But this is again, run blocking needs to get better. They were improving in the last couple weeks, and today was a little bit of regression in my opinion. But it was good to see them run duo, like you mentioned, which is basically a gap scheme type of play. Some people describe it as power without a puller. So they're making some progress in that area, but I just wanted to see less negative plays. Like, it's okay to get stuffed at the line. I mean, not ideal, but again, there's just those negative plays were cropping back, and that was discouraging to see. And they also had some issues picking up stunts, some inside stunts today in pass blocking, which was an issue.
Yeah, movement up front has given them a lot of issues. And, usually you talk about that from an offensive line standpoint. It's the two guys involved, whether it's a guard or in tackle or center guard center. It's about knowing I'm having, prior film study, obviously, for blitz pickup and movement in the run game, but just being on the same page, and that so you can stay on the same level, so you know what to expect from the other guy. When you're not, that's when you start getting separation, both in the depth in pass pro, when guys are when the defensive guy on a stunt gets his edge, you don't have anyone on the same level as you to pass him off to and kind of zone that stunt off. And I texted one of my former teammates, he's also offensive lineman. It feels like the pass protection specifically against stunts this season, TEs, ETs, Pirates, all that stuff, has been down. It feels like there's a less cohesiveness with some of these units. Some of that could be attested to just turnover, all across the league. But it feels like those things are getting home more than I remember them. That could just be my bias as an offensive lineman seeing it more. But especially with the Raiders, they had some trouble there. With wasn't a great pass rush unit outside of Simmons. But Geno was under some pressure. Even the pick that he threw when he was rushed, it was a full line slide, and that's where all five linemen. It's a full zone left. You got the gap to your left, and so everybody's relying on everybody else, and they even still got pressure on him, and it was quick pressure, and he rushed the read. It was like a little delay drag to Mayer, and throws a bad ball, throws a pick. But I mean, he had no shot there. He shouldn't have thrown the ball, but he had no shot, and so you just wonder, what can they do to mitigate some of that stuff? And they tried literally the easiest protection in the book, and it still didn't work out.
Yeah, and you talked about it. They really lowered Geno's average depth of target in this game, and I think that's smart, especially against this type of defense that's just giving you a lot of air in coverage, playing a lot of soft coverage. So it was good to see Geno just understand, like, you don't have the protection to push the ball downfield as much as you want. So you have to adjust and throw some shorter routes. They had some good play actions where they got guys open quickly. He could hit. They were able to get outside the pocket on some movement stuff. So that's pretty much like what they have to do to move the ball, because this offense is very limited in terms of what they can do as far as not having Brock Bowers, your number one receiver there, issues with the offensive line. It's just kind of like a hodgepodge of like things that could work with what you have as a unit offensively. And, it was overall, I thought it was a good game plan. Obviously, in the red zone, everybody remembers the pass to Alex Kappa not working out. But overall, I thought the game plan was smart as far as just taking care of the ball, lowering that ADOT, getting some runs that will have less risk of a negative play. And until Colton Miller and Brock Bowers returns, this is pretty much what you have to do to move the ball.
Yeah, as it was unfolding, and I was like, oh, this is their game plan this week. I'm like, okay, it's less explosive, it's less fireworky, but like this is what they have to do to try to win games and stay competitive. It starts with the Titans, who are a lesser foe, but Titans came back in the Cardinals last week. But yeah, there's a level in the NFL and football in general of the coaches that are able to have self-awareness about who they are in the moment. I talked about this last show. If you can, in real time, just reflect honestly about what we have in our limitations and all the positions and personnel, and build your attack off that, you'll at least give yourself a chance in these games. And so the first few weeks, it definitely felt like they were trying to play like an offense that was more high-flying than the pieces they have. And so they've adjusted, and we'll see if this continues, see if they'll continue to keep Jeanty involved. I think he played, let me find it here. He had
he had like 16 carries in the third quarter when I checked, so
Because
pretty high up there.
his rate was high. I think I already mentioned that, but he broke 5 tackles, and overall just was a gritty runner. And some days are like that, and he's built to do that. And so if that's what the day is called for, then that's what the day is calling for. And a lot of those plays will be blocked better. We'll check in the all 22, but this gave them a chance, and they you allowed the Titans to make the mistakes. You didn't make all the critical mistakes, and they gave you the ball inside the red zone, and you capitalize on it. And so that's what you let bad teams do that, and you take advantage. And wins are hard to come by in the NFL. I was always told to never apologize for winning, and that is still true, despite it being the Titans today. So that they have something to build on. It felt like the defense was kind of flying around themselves. They had a little boost of energy, not to just have such an offensively heavy show. Crosby, Devin, the guys were really flying around. Latu. I mean, it felt like they had a little fire under them as well. I'm sure when they get a rookie quarterback back there, they want to make things known. Titans have their own O-line issues, and so they capitalized on it. They brought pressure. They played really sticky on the back end, didn't really give a lot of explosive gains. And I believe that this is a more complete game of what they're capable of doing. They're going to have to play a clean game against the best teams to have a chance. And so this was a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it was a good game, and they some of those zero blitzes hit home. Notably, that one where they got a fumble near their own goal line, where Devin White got in scot-free, and they were able to take away the big plays. Like I talked about it before the game. I thought the Raiders' style of defense matches up well against Cam Ward, because Cam Ward's always looking for those deep plays, but the Raiders play a lot of zone and give you a lot of the underneath stuff. And to his credit, he did take some of the underneath stuff today more than he has this season. Yeah. And that actually led to some production. Like Devin White, he had those splash plays that people remember, like sack and interception, but he's just like, like he's got to make some of those tackles in the open field,
Not just him. I'm glad you brought that up.
It's not just him too. Jamal Adams missed them.
And they missed a lot of tackles. It just felt like, he jumps off a short pass and 3 guys have a chance and they just can't wrap up. And, what would have been a 3-yard play gets a first down conversion. And that was happening the majority of the game. So the tackling definitely has a long way to go. Today was not one of their best tackling days. Devin White would react and then overrun a guy catching one of these checkdowns. And so, for this, like you said, for the splash plays, for the interception, the fumble recovery, he's got to shore that up to have a more complete impact on the game.
Yeah, and Caillou Blue was the starter opposite of Darian Porter. I thought there might be a chance that Darian Porter ends up starting next to Eric Stokes when he came back, but they're giving Caillou Blue another chance. Pete Carroll kind of talked about it during the week. He called him a rookie, but he's not a rookie. But I think he meant he's a rookie in this defense playing for in his first year, and they want to help him develop, even though he's having some growing pains. But he did open up the possibility of a competition between him and Darian Porter, because Caillou Blue obviously has been struggling. Didn't notice him too much today, but I mean, you get a huge break with Calvin Ridley leaving the game with a hamstring injury, because he's by far their best receiver. He just had a 100-yard day the week before, and he gets open plenty. He just has struggles catching the ball. So today they got a break as far as dealing with receivers that are tough to cover. So it remains to be seen whether Kyle Blue could be that guy, but he'll have a much tougher challenge next week against the Chiefs and their speed on the outside.
Yeah, definitely. And that plays into everything. They were down on third down, kept them 2 of 12, I think. So, again, yeah, top-down coverage. They felt like they rallied, but then the tackling again. And we'll see how they play with the numbers on the back end. If they're in nickel and dime, who plays where, who gets to start. It's very interesting. It feels like a very fluid situation, and as well it should be. I don't think there's been anyone who's necessarily proven that it's their job overall. And so as Pete's starting to continue to kind of develop the roster, these are little small competitions. There's ones like the Jackson Powers Johnson one that doesn't make sense. And then this one makes more sense to kind of get new fresh blood in there and see what guys are doing.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously this is not like a win that's all of a sudden going to propel the Raiders into the playoffs. But again, as a double-digit win, you did what you're supposed to do at home. For me, I think back on the Bears game, I'm like, man, if they executed against the Bears, got that field goal or one of those plays flipped on the other side of the coin, they could be 3-3 headed into this game against the Chiefs. And that's just what happens when you don't take care of business. But as much doom and gloom around this team, the AFC is still a pretty messy picture. There's like a lot of teams that aren't doing what they're supposed to do. Everybody's kind of in contention right now.
Yeah, definitely. I just saw the new odds. Steelers are favored in the AFC North. The Ravens are just in a free fall right now. The Bengals just traded for a 41-year-old Joe Flacco, and Dylan Gabriel in Cleveland just looks like he doesn't have any tools to be an NFL quarterback. So that's one whole division that feels very up for grabs. And then you look at the West, Chargers are ailing. A lot of injuries in the league. It's been a really rough start of the season for injuries. Chargers are ailing. Chiefs are trying to rebound, but they lost to the Jags. So you're right. There's the moral of the story, the bigger picture is such small margins. And that's why I think we harp on the Raiders, because we're deep in the weeds. And I think the fans see it too, is that, yeah, you might not be Super Bowl favorites in Vegas's eyes, but that doesn't matter. Week to week, if you just don't shoot yourself in the foot, you play within your means, you take shots when they're there, and you rely on your stars, you put them in positions to win, you can win games. Like it's not this far-fledged thing where you don't have anything that any talent in the building. And so that's the frustrating, I imagine, part for fans. And then watching is just that I understand where the margins are won and lost, just little hidden yardage here, undisciplined stuff here. I watch the whole slate of college football. It's all over the place. The best consistent teams are the ones that at the worst stay neutral, and they let the other team make the mistakes. And today the Titans made more mistakes, big mistakes. And if you can be the team on the positive side of that more times than not, you at least have a chance to win in the end. You'll be within a score. And in the NFL, that is as much as you can ask for, being in a score late in the fourth with a chance to win or tie. It's amazing how simple it can be sometimes.
Yeah, you just don't want to be in a situation like in the Indianapolis game where you're just shooting yourself in the foot constantly, And I felt like they had a chance to compete in that game if they just didn't, shoot themselves in their foot with so many self-inflicted mistakes. So like after this game, I think the encouraging parts are Michael Mayer played really well.
Yes.
In the run blocking department, I didn't notice him missing any blocks, and he was good as a receiver, making some contested catches and just finding those open spaces.
There was that one sequence, I think, early in the fourth quarter where Geno was checking to a run. They had 6 in the box, and they were zone twice in a row. I think the first play he gets beat by an end. But other than that, you're right. He had a pretty good day blocking. He's more of a well-rounded tight end than Bowers. And I think, if he maintains his health, he's good enough of a weapon, as we see, pass catching. He won't do everything Brock does, but he gives you a lot out of that position. And so his continued development is a big deal. And obviously being a bigger target, a bigger body for Geno in this new, hopefully adapted development of, I'm going to take checkdowns, I'm going to take underneath routes, guys sitting in zone underneath and stuff like that. Michael Mayer will be, I think, even more integral part of the offense.
Yeah, and like there's this slow takeover from Trey Tucker, where he's kind of taking that complimentary role that that Jacoby Myers has been playing, where he is getting those intermediate passes, and he did a pretty good job of running after the catch today too. So there's continued growth from him, and once you add Bowers back into the equation, where you have a Michael Mayer that's playing well, and then you have a Trey Tucker on the outside who could be that complimentary guy, but instead of running a 4.6, he runs a 4.2 and could create after catch too. Those are good things. I'm sure there's some development within the line. It's hard to tell without the all 22, but just hopefully those guys are starting to get a little bit more comfortable with each other. Yeah. Obviously, the stunts weren't good, but I'm sure we could find some good moments in the all 22. But I think the main takeaway is Chip Kelly is kind of understanding who this team is and what he has to do as far as creating a game plan, even though it's not always going to be pretty, that gives them the best chance just, based on the matchups that he has.
I can't imagine, going from Ohio State and the cupboard's full relative to the competition. And then now you're in with the Raiders, still in the NFL, but for him, it's just kind of a mental gymnastics of like, all right, I've really got to adjust. And you would like to think he has thought this through already. It's not, I don't think it's anything novel, but yeah, it feels like he's finally coming around to understanding what he has. And on the Trey Tucker point, I thought his routes were really crisp today. And as you mentioned, his run after the catch was really dynamic. He's becoming a threat just with yak, getting the ball in his hands, moving forward or moving, diagonally, and then letting him make a guy miss and get north and south. And then I was really encouraging. It's a small detail, but on that duo run and a couple of the inside zone runs, he's lined up, kind of inside of the tight end where, when you're running, if you look at the Rams and how they run duo, you have to bring in receivers that sometimes your numbers and your leverage aren't there. You've got to bring them inside of the box to really dig out safeties and drop corners. And, we talked about Besh being kind of a guy who can physically do that, wants to do that, is willing to do that. But it was really encouraging to have Trey Tucker in there doing that, because one thing that fans need to know is that most good coordinators, and I believe Chip's a good coordinator, you put that on film, you put him, putting his body on the line for run blocking will lead to play action opportunities where it's an inside insert release, and he's got a great matchup with leverage and all the space in the world. But he's got to show his willingness to block, and you've got to have success on that play. And so it's a small thing, but him sticking his nose in there is a really big deal.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Puka gets a ton of yardage because he's such a great blocker on duo, and then when they run play action off of it, it's hard to tell whether it's a run or pass, and he gets wide open on those. So definitely thing to build on. I mean, I feel like you could build a whole run game just based off outside zone and duo. If you get those plays down, there's a lot you could do with that.
Yeah, I wish they would lean more into it. Yeah.
All right, it doesn't look like we have a ton of questions on the chat, so we'll probably just end it here, and then we could take questions throughout the week, and I could write them down on a list, and we could talk about those in our preview pod for next week. So we'll end it here. The Raiders they have 2 wins on their belt, so they're gonna play Kansas City next. So they're just building. So we'll hopefully you guys have a good week. Thank you for joining us. We will talk to you next week.
Appreciate it. Come back.